The Peterborough Chronicle of 1154 also recorded that in that year the people of England acquired a new king, Count Henry of Anjou, grandson of William the Conqueror and the first of the Plantagenet kings. A lover of learning, he spoke fluent Latin as well as French, but no English. And the English acquired a new queen, Eleanor of Aquitaine, the daughter of William X of Aquitaine. Henry II was crowned here in Westminster Abbey in a lavish ceremony. The clergy wore silk vestments that were more costly than anything ever seen before in England. The king and queen and the great barons wore silk and brocade robes. The luxury was fitting, it was thought, for an occasion that solemnized the bringing together of so much land and wealth. Henry brought his inheritance of William the Conqueror's land in England and northern France. Eleanor, the greatest heiress in the Western world, brought with her a great swathe of what is now France, from the Loire to the Pyrenees, from the Rhone to the Atlantic. This was a huge kingdom, the greater part of it made up of French-speaking lands across the Channel. As it grew, the English lands and the English language became an ever less significant part of it. French and Latin were even more firmly entrenched as the languages of the court and government of the country. Yet after their coronation, Henry and Eleanor rode in procession along the Strand, and it's reported that the people shouted "Was Hail" and "Vivat Rex," wishing them long life in English and in Latin. English was still alive in the streets. In the court and royal palaces, new ideas from across the Channel were in the air, and new words to express them, words which sang, of courtesy and honour, questing and damsels, jousting and tournaments. French words, every one. The vocabulary of romance and chivalry was heard in England. Bona donasius placiat su friend, del ben quieus vuel quieus vid el mal soffrire, e pues lo mals non puera dantener, ans merce blanquel patam egalment. Eleanor, England's new queen, was considered the most cultured woman in Europe. It was she, more than any other, who patronised the poets and troubadours whose verses and songs created the romantic image of the Middle Ages as the age of chivalry, a glorious vision that was never realised outside the pages of medieval literature. 100 years before, the word chivalry, formed round the word for horse, had simply meant cavalry. It was the fierceness of the mounted warriors that had carried the day for the Normans at Hastings, and since then many English peasants had come to know the mounted Norman soldiers as little more than thugs and bullies who ran the country by force. But now, mounted warriors had become knights, and the word chivalry came to mean a whole model of ideals and behaviour, infused with honour and altruism, one that prescribed how to act towards one's liege lord, one's friends and enemies, and of course fair, cruel ladies. Ideas had shifted, and words with them. It was in Eleanor's reign that French writers brought the stories of Arthur and his knights out of the history books and into poetry, cultivating a language far richer and subtler than the one that the first Norman settlers had spoken and written. The poets rhapsodized about Eleanor, celebrating her as the most beautiful woman in the world, pouring out the impossible longing for the perfect woman that was at the heart of the cult of courtly love. The poetry of affairs of the heart had come to England. singing of pain and joy, and beginning a line in literature that runs through Shakespeare's sonnets and the great romantic poets to today's 3-minute pop lyrics. Meanwhile, England's native inhabitants were singing their own songs about things in their less exalted condition, things that concern them every day. They sang in their own language, English. That song was first recorded in 1225, making it one of the earliest pieces of English that's still recognisable today. There's not a single French word in it. Words like summer, come, sow, seed and new can be traced right back to the flatlands of Frisia. Spring and wood can be found in the Anglo-Saxon poem Beowulf, and Mary, sing and loud in the works authorised by Alfred the Great. There's a pure line of Old English vocabulary here, in a song that comes from the peasants and the land, at the opposite end of the social scale from the troubadours' songs. The French language of the grand lords hasn't penetrated down to the common people. Certainly the native English and the French overlords lived very different lives. William the Conqueror had introduced the system of feudalism into England, and though evolving, it still defined all economic and social relations, expressed in French words like vilain and vassal, labourer, bailiff and factor. In the country, where 95% of the population lived, the English were essentially serfs, another French word. Not technically slaves, but tied for life to their lord's estate, which they worked for him and, at a subsistence level, for themselves. While the English-speaking peasants lived in small cottages or huts, their French-speaking masters lived privileged lives in their castles. Our modern vocabulary still reflects the distinction between them. English speakers tended the living cattle, which we still call by the Old English words of ox or cow. French speakers ate the prepared meat, which came to the table, which we call by the French word beef. In the same way, the English sheep became the French mutton, calf became veal, deer, venison, and pig, pork. English animal, French meat, in every case.